Welcome to DonzyTech. In this tutorial, I'm going to teach you how you can use the Raptor software to draw flowcharts. Okay, so to get started, just download the Raptor software. So Raptor flowcharts. So from their main website, you can download the Raptor software. Okay. You can choose or download from Softonic as well. So from their main website, you can download for either Mac or Windows. So if you're on a Mac, you just download the Mac, and then you download the Microsoft Runtime to run your Raptor software. Similarly, I'm going to do the same thing for Windows as well. Alright, so I have it installed. I'm going to skip this process. Okay, so right from here, you can see we have symbols here. So use these symbols to draw the flowchart. Okay, so for input, we use it to accept input from a user. So for you to accept any input from a user, you select the user symbol, then you click here to insert it. Okay, but before I start, you need to save your file because it will prompt you if you don't. Okay, so I'm just going to keep it inside this folder here. So input. So to get this window, you can choose to double click on the symbol you selected here, or you can just right click and then select edit to get the same window. So now inside the prompt, that's where you write the text to show to the user. Maybe enter your full name. And then after you get the full name from the user, you need to store that inside a variable. So the variable will just be like a container to store whatever value the user will enter here. So here you can create a variable like full name. And then we have the output symbol too. Okay. You can then use the output to show whatever value the user entered in the first input field. So we use input to accept data from a user or a value, and then we use the output to show a variable or a message to the user. Equally, you just select it and then you click to have it in your flowchart. Okay. You can choose to right click and choose edit, or you just double click on the symbol to get this window here. So here you can just output the variable name, full name. And right from here, you can run your flowchart. So you have the message we entered here. Enter your full name, maybe John Doe. And then to move to the next one, which is the output, and then to print whatever value the user entered. So basically, that's how the input works. Okay. And then you can also ask for more input from a user. So to do that, I will even add another input here and enter your email address. Similarly, you can create a variable to store the data or the value the user will enter for the email address. So here you can create a variable, let's say email address. And now inside here, you can choose to output the full name and then the email address by using the plus. Okay. Or you can choose to output it on a different line. Okay, so I'll just use the output again here. Then I'll write the email address. You always have to make sure that the variable name you're outputting here should be the same thing you created here, else you get an error when you run it. Okay. Let me stop it and run again. So full name John Doe. And to ask for the email address, john@gmail.com. And then lastly, it will print the name and then the email address. Okay. So you can actually choose to print the email and then full name on the same line by using the plus, which is also called concatenation in programming. Okay, but for now, just focus on how it works. So full name and then email address. So if I should run this here, John Doe, and then john@gmail.com. So here you can see we have John Doe and then the email address, but they are together. So you can just create a space between them. Okay. So here I'm just going to create an empty string here, and then I'll join that empty string to the full name and then the email address. Or you can choose to write something here, but I just kept it blank so right, to just create a space between the full name and then the email address. If I run this program again, John Doe, then email address john@gmail.com. So here you can see we have the name and then the email address on the same line, but this time around we have a space between it. That's how the concatenation works. Okay. So that's it for the input fields. Okay. In the same way, you can generate a simple addition operation using the same Raptor software. So yeah, I'm going to ask two numbers from a user, and then to accept input, we use the input. So I'll just insert that here. Then ask enter first number. We are asking two numbers from the user. You enter first number and then enter second number. I'm going to store the first input in a variable named num1. With variable names, you can choose any other name you prefer, but the variable name must make sense to the value you are getting from a user. So for instance, you have first name here, you don't have to use num1, but when you use num1, it's going to work. But the issue is that any programmer who takes your code will understand that you are taking first name from the user, meanwhile you are taking a number. So anytime you create a variable, make sure the value you are getting should correspond with the variable name you are creating. So num1, and then you get another input from the user, enter second number. Now store this also in a second variable and name it num2. Okay, so now I can just use the output to show the addition of the two numbers. So here I'm just going to say num1 plus num2. Okay, so first number I'll say 10, second number let's say 20, and then you get the output as 30. The same way you can do the same thing for multiplication, division, and then subtraction. Okay. Now you notice that after you output the result, you don't get access to the output again. What I mean by this is that if you want to use a selection to make a decision, you won't get access to the variable. So then we use the assignment to do that. Now just take off the output and then insert the assignment here. So use the assignment to create a variable and then assign a value to it, or you can just perform an operation within the assignment. Okay. Similarly, I'm just going to double click on it or just right click and then choose edit for the same window. So on top here we have variable. That's where you store the values you'll be adding or subtracting. Okay. I'm just going to use result as a variable name, but you can choose any other name you prefer. And then you make sure you use the same variable names here. You have num1 and then num2. If you want to add the two numbers, you can say num1 plus num2 here. So now the addition of the two numbers will be stored in the variable named result. So now you can then output the variable name result. Let me go back to this result. Num1 plus num2. So now you just output the variable name result. Okay, so as for the first number 20, let's say 10, and then we get the same output, but this time around we have the result inside a variable, meaning we can use a variable to make decisions or do any other thing in our program. But if you just use the output, you won't be able to store the addition of the two values you got from the user. All right. So now that's with the assignment. And with the assignment too, you can use it to create a variable in your program. So let me give you an example here. Yeah, I'm just going to use the assignment here, and I can create a variable, let's say num1, and I'll set a value to it, let's say 20. And then I'll use another assignment here, let's say num2, and then I'll set it to, let's say 30. Okay. Now I can then output the addition of the two numbers. This time around, we just set the variables in our program. We didn't ask any input from the user. In the same way, you can do num1 plus num2. Okay. If I run this, it's going to add the two numbers we specified. So we get the 50, 20 plus 10. 20 plus 30 is 50. Okay. That's how the assignment works. So you can use assignments to perform an operation or just set a variable in your program. So you can equally create a different assignment here and then you add it. So you can create a variable for, let's say, results. Okay. And then inside the result, you are going to add the two numbers you got from the user, num1 plus num2. Okay. Now let me take off the addition here and then just output the result variable we created in the assignment here. Okay. So in the same way, if you run this program, you should get the same output. So we have the 50. Okay. So we set a variable num1 and then a value 20, num2 a value of 30, and then we use the assignment just like we did for the input to store the addition of the num1 and then num2, and then you can output the result. Again, also you can concatenate the result as well. So here you can add a message here, maybe your result is, and then you can join it to the variable. Okay. If you run this, you get your result is. Okay, that's how I can do concatenation in the Raptor software. Okay, now that's all about the input, output, and then the assignment. And the next one to look at is the selection. The selection is just like the if statement you have in the program. So we use it to make decisions in the Raptor software. Okay, so I'm just going to accept a number from the user. Maybe enter grade 1. So I'm just going to get the grades of a student for, let's say, 3 courses. And the enter grade for enter score for course 1. Okay, let me just copy this because I'll just repeat it for the others. I'm going to store that in a variable named course 1. Okay, let me do underscore 1. And then since I'm getting 3, I'm going to use 3 inputs. Okay, so you can use the input as many as you want. So I just change this to course 2 and then the variable name also to course underscore 2. And then the third one, which is course 3. Okay. So I'll store this in a variable named course underscore 3. Alright, so now just like we did earlier on, we can use the assignment to perform the addition, subtraction, multiplication, division operation. Okay, or you can just use the output. But the issue is that when you use the output, we don't get access to the addition of all these 3 numbers in a variable. So for you to get them in a variable, we need to use the assignment here. Okay. So here I'm just going to create a variable here. Let's say total underscore scores or total score. Okay. And then here, just like we did for the first one, I'm going to add the courses. So course 1 plus course underscore 2 plus course underscore 3. So here I've added all the 3 courses you'll be getting from the user, and then I'll store that in a variable named total score. Okay. So now here, let me just output the total score so that you see how it is working. Okay. So here total underscore score. Okay. Now let me stop this and then rerun it again. Okay, to ask enter score for course 1, let's say you had 70. Course 2 you had, let's say, 80, and then course 3, let's say you had 60. Okay. And then to sum all the 3 courses and then to give you the output, which is 210. Okay, 210. So now we have access to the variable which contains the addition of all these 3 values we got from the user. So we use the selection to make decisions in the program. I'll just insert the selection here. And anytime you see this symbol in a flowchart, it means that you're going to make a decision there. So just double click on it, or just like we did for the other symbols, you can equally right click and then choose edit to get the same output here. Okay, so here you make the decision. So you can see if the total score, this is how you make the decision. Because we are using the variable here, total score. Okay, if the total score of the student is greater than or equal to, you can give a condition, maybe let me say 150. So if the addition of the 3 courses of the student is greater than or equal to 150, then you can output a message to the user. So the yes runs anytime the condition here is true, and then no means the condition there is false. Okay, you can just insert the output here, then you can add a message here. Your total score is, and then let me just add the total score variable. Right, to show a message of the total score. The total score is, and then to show the addition of all the courses the user took. Okay. Then use one output here again, and then I'll say you failed the exams. Sorry, you passed the exams. Okay. So anytime the total score of the student is greater than or equal to 150, you write this message. You passed the exams. Okay. But in a situation where the student failed, you need to use the no here. So here you can just say the same thing. Your keep it in a quotation mark because it's a string. Your total score is, let me give a space and then add the variable total score. So total underscore score. Okay. So here you can then use the output to tell the user maybe you failed the exams or something. So here in the same, I'm going to keep it inside the 2 quotation marks. You failed the exams. So now we just use the selection here to make a decision. So now let's try the loop and see how it's going to work. So enter score for course 1. Maybe you had 70. Course 2 you had 80. And then course 3 too you had 80. So you're going to sum them and then make the decision here. So you can see your total score is 230, and then you pass the exams because the condition here is true. The total score of the student is actually greater than the 150 condition specified there. Now let me run it again and then use a lower value. Let's say you had 30 for course 1, 20 for course 2, and then 40 for course 3. So now the addition of this course is going to be less than the condition specified here, which is a 150. 150. So you get your total score is 90, and then you failed the exams because your grade or your total score is less than the condition specified in the selection here. So now that's how the selection works. Okay. In the same way, you can just create a variable to test this thing. So to create a variable, use the assignment to create a variable. So you can say variable 1, let's say num1, and write, let's say 50. Okay. And then num2, I'm just creating a second variable, and let's say 80. Okay. So here, let me store that in the assignment again. I'm going to sum the 2 numbers here, just like we did earlier on. So you can say total, and then you sum them num1 plus num2. Okay. So now you have the addition of these 2 numbers in this variable total. So again, you can use the selection to make a decision here. So you can see if the total is greater than or equal to, let's say, 100. You want to do something, you can just output and keep deleting this thing. So total greater than or equal to 100. So you can use the output here. Total greater than or equal to 100. So I just keep the output here. So if the condition is true, then we see total is greater than 100. But then if it is false, you can use the output here again, and then we say total is less than 100. Okay, so if you run this program here, I'm going to sum them and then give you the output. Total is greater than 100, which is true. 50 plus 80 is greater than 100. But now let me just change the values for the variable here. Let me do 20 so that we get 70, which is less than 100 here. So if I run the program again, I'm going to get total is less than 100. So that's how you can use the selection to make a decision inside the program. Okay. So now the next one I'm going to talk about is the call. So we use the call to call on a function you have created inside our flowchart or the Raptor software. Okay. So to create a function or a procedure, I just click on the add procedure here. Okay. And then here, just like you had in your normal programming languages, we use you can create a function, you can just pass parameters to it, and then set procedure name is just the name for your function or your procedure. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to set a name like add number. So this is going to be the name for my procedure or the function. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to set two parameters because I'll be getting two numbers from a user. I can say num1 here and then num2. You can pass more parameters to your function. Okay. And then let me edit this thing to show you. Okay, so here you can see we have input and then output. We have to take note of this. All right. Now I can do the addition inside my procedure here or the function. So here I'm just going to add the two numbers now to be passed from our main chat here. Okay, I'm just going to create a variable. Let's say result. I'm going to store this in num1 plus num2. Okay, here we don't have any value here, and then I'm going to use the output to show the addition of the two numbers that will be stored in this variable. Okay, here I can see your result is, then you can add the variable result. Whatever name you used here should be the same name you use here, so you're also going to get an error when you run it. Right. So now, just like we did earlier on where we add the addition inside our main here, this time around we've added the function inside this procedure add numbers. Okay, so I'll just call this add numbers function inside the main here. Okay, so now since we don't have any values in here, I'm going to use the input on the main loop to ask the user to enter two numbers. Okay, so enter first number. Okay, then I'll store this in a variable called num1, but I can choose any other name you prefer. Okay, since I use two parameters, I'm going to use two numbers here, so I'm going to get an error when I run the program. So enter second number, and I can store this also in a different variable. I'll choose num2, and then here we perform the logic. So use the call to call on a function that we have created here, okay, or a procedure I have created. Okay, I'm just going to call on the add numbers function. Okay, and then if you don't enter the same name you use here, I'm going to get an error. Let me quickly show you that. So let's say enter number. Okay, so it will tell you add number is not a valid procedure name. Okay, because you have not created it. You created numbers, not number. Okay, and then you need to pass in the number of arguments you passed when you created the procedure here. Okay, so you added two, so num1 and then num2. Okay, so now if I run this to ask for the two numbers and then to skip to this function and then replace the num1 and num2 parameters in the procedure with the values the user is going to enter. So here let me say 20 and then 10. So it's going to call on the function and then add the two numbers the user entered. Okay, basically that's how you can use the call function. Okay. So here it's not only addition you can do, it's the same thing. You can do subtraction, multiplication, you can do division depending on what you want to do. Alright, so now that's all for the call. Right. So now the last one I'm going to talk about is the loop. So we just use the loop to repeat an action. Okay. Just like the name suggests, loop to repeat something over and over again. Okay. So first I'm just going to create a variable here. I'm going to use the assignment to create a variable. I'm going to create a variable, say counter. Okay. So with the loop, I'm going to teach you how I can generate a multiplication table with the Raptor software. Okay. I'm just going to create a variable counter and I'll set it to 1. Okay. Okay, now so after you created the variable counter, you set a value of 1 to it. Okay. So let me explain how you can do this in an actual program. So in program, you can write, let's say counter is equal to 1. That's the same thing we've done here. Just created a variable called counter and then we set a value of 1 to it. Right. So now from here, okay, so I said you'll be generating a multiplication table with the Raptor software. So I'm just going to get two values from the user, the counter and then the ending. But for now, I'm going to specify that creating a variable here. So after this, I'll just create an input for the user to enter the ending and then the number he or she wants to generate the multiplication table for. Okay. So here I'm just creating a variable called ending. That's where I'm going to end the loop. Okay, so 12. So for now, I'm using fixed values here. Okay. So now I'll just select the loop here. Let me reset this thing. I'll just select the loop here and then insert it here. Right. So if you take a close look at this, you can see we have the same decision here, just like we had with the selection. Okay. So this, as I said earlier on, means that you need to make a decision here. So the triangle, no, the kite looking diagram here. So this is used to make a decision inside a flowchart. Okay, so anytime you see this thing in a flowchart, means that there's a decision going to be taken there. Right. So here we specify the condition. So here if you can see if the counter, so you just created a variable counter here. So if the counter is equal to the ending number, which you can actually write a value here. I choose to use a variable to do that. So I store that in a variable named ending, and then the value assigned to it is 12. Okay. So if the counter is equal to the ending number, you want to do something. Okay. So here means the condition is true, and then no means the condition is false. Right. So the condition is false, the loop goes back and then repeat the action until the counter is equal to the ending number. Alright, so now the logic here is that if the counter doesn't increase, it means that the loop will run to infinity. Okay, it will run forever if you don't increase the value of the counter. Because we said if the counter is equal to the ending number, you have to end the loop and do something. So now if you don't increase the counter so that it gets to 12, it means that the loop will never stop. Alright, so to do that, I'll just use another assignment here to increase the counter. Okay, so now anytime the counter anytime the counter is not equal to the ending number, you can see here that you have to use the same variable name you used here. So I use counter, I'm going to put the same variable name here, counter. So anytime the counter is not equal to the ending number, just add 1 to the counter. Okay, so if the counter is not equal to the ending number and it gets here, to just add 1 to the counter, so the counter will now move from 1 to 2. Okay, so to keep moving until it gets to the ending number, and then to end the loop, and then to perform any action you have here. Right. So now let me just output the counter. So here, that's where you put the function or the main thing you want to do. All right. So here, let me just output the counter here. So I see how the value of the counter works. Okay. So now I have to take a close look at the loop here. Okay. So you can see when it's less than, to add 1, and then the value here keeps increasing. Okay. So to keep increasing the value until it gets to the ending number, which is 12, as we specified here. Okay. Okay, so now since we have the value of the counter 1 to up to 12, we can then generate the multiplication table. Okay, and you know that normally in multiplication table we have a number times 1, a number times 2, a number times 3, a number times 4, and that order. But this time around, we want to ask the user to enter that number. Right. So to do that, I'll just use the input here, and then I'll ask the user to enter the number. Okay, so instead of doing it manually in our program, so you just ask enter a number. Okay, now I can store this in a variable. I'm just going to use number. You can choose any other name you prefer. Okay, so now since I said the user will be entering where he or she wants to end the multiplication table, I'm going to delete this, else it will be fixed in the program. The user has to dynamically enter the ending number. I'm just going to use another input here. I'll say enter ending number. Okay. And then I'll store this in a variable called ending. Alright. Okay. So now you get a number from the user and then the ending number from the user. So I just use the same name here. Okay. So that's the ending number. This is the variable name, ending number. And then that's the same variable you have here. So this is the counter. If the counter is equal to the ending number the user will enter, end the loop. Okay. Now let me run this. So to ask the user to enter a number, let's say 2. So I want to end at, let's say, 20. So whatever value the user enters, that's where the loop is going to stop. So it will keep adding 1 to the counter until it gets to the ending number the user entered. Okay. Alright. So you notice the loop stopped when it got to 20 because that was the ending number the user entered. Alright. Now since we have the number and then the ending number and the value of the counter, we can then generate the multiplication table. Okay, so now this is the counter. I can multiply the counter by the number the user will enter. The number the user will enter, I saw that in a variable called num. But just multiply this by the counter, and then you notice the counter was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in that order. And then since it is a loop, it's going to repeat the action over and over again. Okay, so now initially the counter is set to 1. So it will be, when I, for instance, I enter 2, it will be 2 times the counter. Okay, so it will be 2 times 1. Okay, so when it prints that, it will check the condition here if the number is equal to the ending number. So if the counter is not equal to the ending number, it will add 1 to the counter. So now it will be 2 times 2, and to move on, add 1 to be 2 times 3 in that order until it gets to the ending number. Alright, so let's see this in action. So if I run this, I enter, let's say 2, and then I want to end at 12 so that the program looks a bit shorter. Alright, I want to end the loop at 12. You can see 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 in that order. So 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 4, 2, 3, 6 in that order. So it will keep generating until it gets to the ending number, which is 12. So to 12, as we all know, is 24. Right. So now you notice the output is just too raw. The user wouldn't understand whatever operation that went on, but he or she only saw the output. Okay. So here you can do a concatenation here. Okay. So you can do a concatenation here. So let's say, let me just take this out. Let me put this somewhere so that I don't get confused. So this is the output that we saw: 2, 4, 6, 8, and 12 in that order. Okay. So now I can add a number here. So first I'll just show the number the user entered. So it will be 2. So normal multiplication, you have 2 times 1, 2 times 2, 2 times 3. Okay. So here we can use concatenation to do the same thing. I'll just bring the 2 quotation marks since it's a string, and I'll just put the x here so that it will be like 2 times a number. Okay, and then that number is generated from the counter. So here I'm just going to write the counter. Okay, so it will be 2 whatever value the user entered, let's say 6, then to show this text times the value of the counter. Okay, now the last one is the equal to sign. So I'm going to use another quotation mark here. Just give a space and then bring the equal to sign. And then the last thing I will do is to add the string or the concatenated text to the output. Okay, so now if I run this, it should look nice. Okay, let's say I want to generate for 6, and then I want to end at, let's say, 12. So if I run this, I should get 6, 1, 6, 6 to 12 in that order. So it's going to generate the table until it gets to the ending number the user entered. Alright, so you notice it stopped at 12. In the same way, if I choose say 2, I want to end at, let's say, 12. In the same way, it's going to generate the multiplication table and then end. So in the same way, it's going to generate the multiplication table until it gets to 12. Alright, so now after the loop ends, we want to add a message. Okay, so I just use the same output here and say multiplication. Let me keep it inside the quotation marks. So multiplication table generated successfully. Alright, so anytime the loop ends, we get this message. Right, so now let me just run the program one more time. So I say 2, I want to end at 12. So you notice the loop keeps going over and over again. We need to keep checking until the condition is true. Alright, so when it is true, multiplication table generated successfully. Alright, so basically that will be all for the Raptor software. We've talked about all the symbols we have in the Raptor software. So if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section and then I'll reply to that. Alright, and also if you need anything you want me to work on, just let me know in the comment section and then also work on that for you. Always remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. All right.